when I went in the Army, I was just 22 years old, a very sheltered life. My mother was a very prim and proper person. I don't think I ever heard the word damn in our household at any time in my life, because this was my mother and father. They were both very strict people. Well, I got back from basic training after 2 months of basic training, and I was home on furlough for Sunday dinner with my mother and father and my sister and my girlfriend, who was later my wife. And the first thing I remember saying as we got to dinner, pass the fucking sugar. That's what I learned in basic training. I know what.
How did that go over with Mom?
Didn't go over very well at all. There was a little boy who had gone off to war, comes home with this kind of language. But you learn that in basic training. I started out in Fort Warren, Wyoming, is where I had my basic training. And then from there I was transferred to Camp Edwards, Massachusetts. And that was near Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts. And I was there actually for 16 months. And I was in the headquarters battalion. But we actually only had one company with us. And our primary function was to get that company ready for overseas. And that was Company A, 61st Quartermaster Laundry Battalion. And actually what it was a part of the Quartermaster Corps, and they had laundry units, which were big trailers with the laundry units, washers and dryers on. They actually were the forerunner of the laundries today, you know, these take-in laundries where you take in and do your laundry. They actually were the forerunner of that in the Army. And that was what our primary unit duties were. And then I went overseas in December of '43, and I went over on the Queen Mary. And what was kind of interesting about the Queen Mary, I'll never forget, the first thing we heard when we got on board was came over the loudspeaker, this is a British ship commanded by British officers and manned by British seamen. And I thought to myself, yeah, but who the hell's paying for it? So anyway, well, it only took 6 days to go over. It was not, because of the speed of the Queen Mary, it didn't have a convoy. It went down the east coast and then across to North Africa, then up to Glasgow, Scotland. And then from Glasgow, we went down to Cardiff in Wales. And we were down there for a week. And from there, I went to Cheltenham, England. And we were in Cheltenham from December of '43 to June of '44.
So tell us a little bit about your experience once you landed in France. What happened there?
Well, and the first few weeks we were stationed out near Saint-Lô, and which was basically just out in the woods and camped in tents and all that. And from there, we moved into Paris. And my first experience in Paris, we got in there late at night, and we were assigned our billets. And the way the billets were assigned, the officers were assigned the fancier hotels, and the greater the grade of hotel, and the higher the rank of officers got those. And the enlisted personnel, they were like smaller hotels and things like that. And it was kind of interesting because I was a ranking non-com in our unit. I was a master sergeant. And so we got into this room after being out in the woods for a couple of months. Boy, here I have a big double bed with a canopy, this huge room with a balcony looking out on the street, and a full bath. It had a toilet and another facility in there that I didn't know what quite it was in those days, but I learned it was a bidet. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, well, we were sleeping in a bed for the first night in a couple of months, and the next thing I know, my commanding officer is knocking on the door. "Sergeant, are you going to get your men out today?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I might as well." And so they marched us over to a restaurant, and this restaurant was a typical French restaurant. They had waiters with the black suits and white shirts, black ties, linen table covers, plates and knives and forks. Well, and they served our first meal there of a breakfast. Well, that only lasted a couple of weeks before the Army took over and converted it into a regular mess hall with Army food.
Did you see any action, any close calls?
No. My weapon during the war was a typewriter, and I did not see any action. In Paris, our office was located on the Champs-Élysées, just kitty corner from the Arc de Triomphe, and that was where our office was. Now that building had previously been occupied by the German Luftwaffe. That's where they had their headquarters when they were in France, and of course they went through and sapped the offices, make sure there weren't any mines or anything. But that was our office, and our primary function there was to get parts, spare parts, to keep these laundry equipment in working order, and that was my primary job. And I was in Paris from August of 45, was it, to, well, I was there, and then I was transferred out of there, and I went to Reims. And I was in Reims for the balance of the war. And in Reims, it was a quartermaster depot, a reclamation depot, where they had all material and coats, uniforms, and things like that would come back for reclamation. And it was kind of an interesting town because we, the United States Army, maintained the depot. It was, we had German PW labor, and the German PW labor, the compound was guarded by the Free French, and there was too much going on between the Free French and the German prisoners that they actually took the Free French off and brought in a Russian guard company. And the Russians were brutal against the prisoners of war. The unit that I had a dozen enlisted men working under me in an office, and I had a German major, pardon me, was in charge of them, and he spoke fluent English. He was formerly he was a pen manufacturer in Germany prior to the war, and of course he wasn't a Nazi or anything like that. He'd been drafted into the Army. We didn't have any problems with the German PWs at all. In fact, most of the German PWs, they kind of took over the mess, and so we had great meals, and they were great bakers, so we ate very well with the German PW cooks and bakers and things like that. We also had a German barber, and that was fine. I was a little apprehensive the first time I went in to get a haircut, but it was perfectly fine.
Were you proud to have served, to have done your part?
Yes. In the Army, you did what you were told, and you went where you were assigned. And this is what I was assigned to, and I was very happy with it. And as I say, my weapon was a typewriter.